Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the PR consultant Alex Dean and the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman. Lovely to see both of you. Welcome. So let's take a look then at the front pages, as ever, kicking off tonight with the Telegraph. It says that the UK has been warned to expect a large influx of people from Gaza after a judge ruled that a refugee scheme set up for Ukrainians also applies to Gazans, and that refusing entry to one family of 6 was a breach of their human rights. Daily Mail says the man chosen as the UK's new borders watchdog intends to work from home in Finland. The Ukrainian president tells The Guardian that Europe cannot support his country in the fight against Russia without support from the USA. According to the Financial Times, the US dollar has weakened on worldwide currency exchanges since Donald Trump's repeated threat of import tariffs. Front of the Metro, Met Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley voices his anger over a High Court ruling that means the force can no longer make its own decisions to sack officers whose conduct means they'd no longer clear vetting procedures. The eye leads with news of banks cutting interest rates and mortgage deals now available at 4%. To the Express, campaigner Dame Esther Ranson pushes again for passage of the assisted dying bill amid suggestion it may not become law after all. The Times, though, says tweaks to the bill that are in the pipeline suggest there is still support for it. Daily Star hears that more than 2,000 secret files relating to the JFK assassination have been unearthed at Donald Trump's instruction, though it's not yet known if they give credibility to conspiracy theories. The Sun speaks to SACS Strictly star Wyn Evans, who says he's ready to make the BBC, or take the BBC, I apologise, to tribunal over the matter. Well, let's head to Alex and Jenny then for a look at the papers. And kicking off with the news of the concerns about the ceasefire deal in Gaza, both, deadlines set by Trump and now also by Netanyahu.
Yes, that if the hostages are not returned by 12 noon on Sunday, that the ceasefire is null and void. Or, as Donald Trump said, all hell will break loose. We don't know if Netanyahu is demanding that all the hostages are released, but we know that that's what Trump said, and this goes far beyond what was agreed in the original ceasefire deal that he took quite a lot of credit for, I think, when it was originally brokered. It is incredibly febrile at the moment, especially given that Donald Trump is doubling down on his suggestion. It's more than a suggestion, his demand that the US take ownership of Gaza. It does beg the question of why should what is it in for Hamas to actually abide by any of the terms of the ceasefire deal if Donald Trump wants to see Gaza as a real estate proposition, which he seems to be continuing to do so today. And Netanyahu is obviously very much emboldened by Donald Trump's comments, hence his statements today.
Yes, he's given him all power, hasn't he, effectively? The problem with Hamas is they're sitting there listening to what the US president has to say, wondering what happens next if they do hand hostages over, whether you get to phase 2, even phase 3, which is this rebuilding. And some suggestions, really, that who would rebuild, having seen Hamas with their weapons aloft during hostage handovers, with the prospect that Hamas would then come back and, retake control and resume operations effectively in Gaza.
Yeah, well, look, I agree with something that Jenny said, which is that if you are negotiating, you have to give the other side something that they can gain. And if the answer is we're going to wipe you out entirely, then it's very difficult to see what Hamas might think would gain from the arrangement. That is why some of the rightly sympathetic international attitude towards the plight of hostages puts much of the commentary at odds with Israel's perspective on the future of Hamas, because there are many within Israel, especially in the bloc that makes up Netanyahu's ability to govern in the Knesset, who absolutely do not believe that Hamas should have a future. And by the way, as a proscribed terrorist organisation in this country, that's, of course, our stated policy too, at least in word, if not in deed. But the basic truth that every hostage must come home is exactly what we would want our government to say if it was British people who were taken hostage like this in October 2023, not last year, 2023 now, don't forget. And I think part of the reason that Israel's position has hardened on this, and is hardened to the extent that they're willing to go along with what President Trump says, everyone must be released or we return in this way, is some of the testimony coming out from the hostages that have been released is so heartrending. The treatment they endured, the belief they would be killed themselves, a belief that is not unreasonable given what's happened to some of the others, people who didn't see their children for years, people who believed that their loved ones had survived October the 7th and would be meeting them when they were released, only to learn that they were murdered. It is that sort of experience that means that people's attitudes on the release of the rest of the hostages have hardened so.
Yes, that was certainly the experience of one of the men released this weekend. Certainly he found that his wife and 2 daughters had been
killed.
Yeah. In the meantime, of course, he sits there saying he wants to withdraw aid, military aid as well, to the King of Jordan, or to Jordan, and sits alongside the King of Jordan, which is the front of the Financial Times, who sits there, I guess, and has to take it, interestingly, but does not want more Palestinians, which is the idea of a permanent displacement of Gazans to places like Jordan, which would probably rock this government, effectively, the Jordanian government.
Absolutely. I mean, there are already 2 million Palestinians in Jordan. It's not a big country. They are saying that they cannot handle any more. It would affect the political makeup of the country, but it also would be a massive strain on the country. And it's so funny that, you know, Donald Trump is very pro other countries taking in refugees, but not his own. And his entire rhetoric today, which wasn't really about bullying. It was bullying. It wasn't really about diplomacy. It was just like, they'll take them. And his sort of threats about withdrawing aid.
Countries are entitled to give aid to who they want to, aren't they?
They are entitled to, but these threats of you take in these 2 million refugees or you're not going to get aid is a menacing position, I would say. And I think he was very graceful, King Abdullah, today. He sat there, he said, we'll take in some children who need cancer treatment. But you can tell there is absolutely no way that he wants to accommodate Donald Trump's plans at all. And it's because this plan is completely outrageous. Also, they support a 2-state solution. There will be no 2-state solution if Gaza is wiped clean of Palestinians who are sent to live in other countries.
You can't have a 2-state solution in the current situation because you'd be gifting a state to Hamas, which you're gifting a state with all its apparatus, recognition internationally, supposedly, to a terrorist organisation.
The Palestinians complain they're not allowed to choose their own leaders, effectively, aren't they? They're not, but this includes the West Bank.
Yes, you know? That's rather backwards, given that it is no election for 18 years now in that territory. And it would seem widespread support for Hamas within it too. But I wanted to answer the point that Jenny was making about Jordan. I have some sympathy with some of what you were saying, and you, because King Abdullah was indeed gracious, as was his father, King Hussein, before him. The Hashemites are desperate to remain in power in Jordan. Their power remains... It's not just a political change that 2 million more people would make to the country. It's a huge demographic one which would change the nature of Jordan very significantly. It seems to me that whilst it's natural to talk to the person who's friendlier to you, the Jordanians, the answer is actually the other side of the border. The answer is in Egypt. You know, the Gaza Strip is 140 square miles. Its population is 2 million. The Sinai Peninsula alone, not the whole of Egypt, just Sinai Peninsula, is so many more times that size, incredibly huge, and has a population of 600,000. So Egypt, supposedly great friends of the people of Gaza, great friends of the people suffering, 200,000 square miles, the Sinai Peninsula, ample space.
I have to say, I can't believe that we are taking Donald Trump's proposal seriously. It is a form of wiping out a population from an area that they call home. This is a form of ethnic cleansing.
Why is it not ethnic cleansing?
Why is it not ethnic cleansing?
You don't have to argue that people should be moved to say that Egypt should have been doing something different for generations. There are 2 borders to the Gaza Strip, and we spend all our time criticising one of them, that with Israel, and conspicuously not even willing to discuss the fact the Egyptians, supposedly their allies, do nothing and maintain a hard border. In fact, until the 7th of October, the best way to earn a living in Gaza was to cross the border into Israel, Israel, work and bring money home. That now, which for 2 generations was the best way to live in for everyday people in Gaza.
With tunnels was the argument, actually, wasn't it? To be fair, but
not the Egyptian one. If it's pothole with tunnels,
that's where the presumption was.
It's pothole with tunnels because terrorist material was coming through, which is not the suggestion with the porous border in Israel. Was that A, workers were going across, that's now finished, and B, that people were going across to do harm to the Israelis, not supplying weaponry into Gaza. Rather different.
So what do you do about the West Bank then, and its proximity to the Gaza Strip in terms of the Palestinians having some sort of homeland? Does everybody move out? Is that, are you suggesting the West Bank goes as well? And let the Israeli settlers also head and take over more land, as they are already, as we know? I
don't think, in fact, I think Trump's been woefully misrepresented in the media because he never said people will be permanently moved out. And I'm serious. That debate, that narrative has carried for an entire week. His spokesman immediately corrected people when they were asked about it and said the president didn't say people would permanently go. It's impossible to keep people whilst you're going to, if you maintain it and rebuild in any sort of meaningful way. But people have a right to live there. I don't dispute that for a moment. And the irony of this is that when you're talking, people are very keen to get away from the discussion about hostages seized murderously in a appalling act, sigh, pretend that it's not an issue, and then talk swiftly about the most extreme caricature of the other side of the debate.
It is the absolute objective.
I wait and listen while you're talking, and so you should be willing to...
You've been talking quite a lot. I am not at all dismissing the hostages. As you know, I was in Israel a few months ago, and it was very, very much on everybody's mind there, and I was constantly reminded of the fact that we don't hear enough about them in the media here. I do think that the way to get them home is to progress with the ceasefire, rather than it was a huge step forward that there has been a ceasefire, that this deal had been broken.
Do you accept that? Do you accept that there has to be a time when eventually you have to say enough's enough, even if they've picked the wrong date?
Enough's enough for who?
The deadline on releasing
46,000 are dead with no homes to go to.
Forgive me, we were discussing the hostages. Do you think
you brought the hostages back in on a discussion about Gaza?
You let there be a time when they just die of old age in Hamas captivity.
The question is, what is the best way of getting the hostages home?
Yeah.
And I would say that entertaining a plan where you're going to, clear out Gaza, allow it to be an international destination for all people of the world, is not necessarily going to make Hamas think we really need to return these people. It gives no reason for them to cooperate at all.
You're beating up, as far as I'm concerned, a straw man. I'm not a spokesman for Donald Trump, and because you find it easy to caricature or mock that, you're not willing to engage in the actual
idea of displacement for Gazan people.
No, I was giving credence to the idea the Egyptians should have been doing more for 2 generations, and it doesn't hurt to think that that's a relevant point. But, I'm not saying that you should move the population of Gaza out into Egypt. That wasn't what I was saying at all. But the fact that the Egyptians have maintained a hard border, I think, is relevant. I see your face, you don't, but that's fine.
I'm just saying that's where aid has come through, that Rafah crossing. Anyway.
Willing to send aid one way, not willing to take people back the other. They're allies, remember. That's supposedly the friends of the Gazans.
Yeah, they've also taken people with medical needs as well, haven't they? Can we move on to another war? Would you mind? Which is Ukraine and... The prospect of the Munich Security Conference this week, the idea that now is crunch time effectively for what any deal would look like for Ukraine. And Zelensky's been saying Europe is not a protector in itself. The US is required at this point.
Yes, he's given this interview to The Guardian where he has said there are voices which say that Europe could offer security guarantees without the Americans. And I always say no. Security guarantees without Americans are not real security guarantees. And I think this is something that most people would accept. I mean, we would like in Europe to assume that we can provide support and turn the tide of wars and face Putin on our own, but we can't. And so the question is, what is going to happen? What is Trump going to say? He has said he could end the war in a day. He has now said that it's going to take a bit longer. We don't know exactly what that would entail. But, Zelensky is now saying that he is he's prepared to negotiate. He understands that that's going to be part of Trump's plan, but he's making it very clear that Europe can't do it without America.
OK. Should we just squeeze one final story in very, very quickly? Did you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Why aren't the Met allowed to sack their rogue officers? This is the Metro.
It seems to me extraordinary that, given that in any other walk of life, acts short of criminal activity convicted in a court can still mean that you are suspended from or dismissed from your job. Doesn't seem to apply in the police. Standards in the workforce of any company in the land far short of a criminal conviction, can mean that you are subject to dismissal. It seems that the Metropolitan Police doesn't have that freedom. You would think that a place with a public duty to have high standards amongst its staff is a place where that freedom should exist the most, where people should be whiter than white, where standards should be higher. And it seems that nothing short of being convicted by a jury means, it would seem from the decision we've had today, that a police officer, no matter how bad it seems their fellow officers think they are, can be removed from their post. I just don't think it's a sustainable position.
I think, appeals are incoming, aren't they, on that? Lots more still to come in the next part of our programme, including why are some MPs now reconsidering their support for the assisted dying bill. Back in just a moment.
Day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world.
I'm Deborah Haynes, Sky's security and defence editor. I've covered Russia's full-scale war since it began, witnessing the terror and the trauma.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege. I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent.
Sky News, get the full story first, free, wherever you get your news.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
The Premier League is exclusively on Peacock. Two of the league's biggest clubs find themselves at the wrong end of the table.
And the mood turns extremely sour.
Desperately chasing a win to turn their season around.
It's a beautiful finish.
Tottenham Hotspur.
To Eriksen. Back towards Amma.
Manchester United. This is the Premier League. February 16, only on Peacock.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
A police force has apologised.
If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem. Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, Alex Dean and Jenny Kleeman. Welcome back to both of you. Let us go to the assisted dying bill, which is in the Times. This is a tweak that says that it talks about High Court judge. It's now a panel.
It's not.
What does the tweak mean?
It's not a tweak. Whatever your view on the policy of assisted dying, assisted suicide, Leadbeater has spent months saying that the High Court provision within her bill was the key thing that made this the strongest framework in the world. And now she says she's going to remove that and everything's fine. Don't pay attention to what I'm doing over here. Watch the nice thing I'm doing over here. I mean, it's claiming it doesn't change a thing. With the best will in the world, it just seems shifty. And what a thing to be shifty about. They say they've taken
submissions and other people would like to get involved in that decision-making, namely social workers and so on. But
she managed to convince people to vote for it on the basis that High Court judges would be performing this role. And then the family court judges said, this will take up all our time. I don't just mean our excess time. I don't just mean the time we had if we sat more. All of the family court's time would be occupied with these cases on any estimate of the throughput. So she's completely vague now on the policy that she is championing and her bill is championing. And if there is anything that needs clarity, surely it's when the state is going to play a part in killing you.
I very much believe that we should have the right to die, which is why I think this intervention is really bad, because we should have this right, I believe, but it should not be in a rushed, haphazard way that makes people feel like it's been fudged. And maybe this is a response to the backlogs in the courts, or maybe it's a response to, as she says, people saying that they need more safeguards. Given that we are, looking at the third reading here, it's a major change to make, and it seems like bad politics.
Again, whatever your view, it's definitely a setback. Right, so even for its most fervent champions, I think people would concede. It makes it less likely to pass.
Yes. And at the Times, I've spoken to a dozen MPs who said they've changed their mind. It is kind of...
There will be more.
But it's...
And the numbers are still actually, quite tight. John Craig was explaining to us. And, those who are supporting it still, like that on the front of the Daily Express, as you can see, Esther Rantzen, still, urging people to go on.
Look, but Esther Rantzen is now on a drug called osimertinib, which means that she tells us, she's got months or years more than she had expected, which is tremendous news and might show the folly, you think, of campaigning in the way that she did, because if it had been passed in the last Parliament the way she wanted to, she might not be with us to have this tremendous news now.
Interesting take on that. Daily Mail, Labour's new borders watchdog will work from home from Finland.
Yes. Yes, you get to blast Labour and their border policies, and also working from home. I don't think that to have this job, you need to be physically at the border watching what happens on it. But the government's preferred candidate for the role, who is 73, lives in Finland, is going to be working from home, which the Mail finds ludicrous. And so do you.
I suppose it's a strong demonstration of the robustness of a policy that means he's going to be outsourced. Not even you can be in the country anymore, Chief Inspector of Borders Watchdog. I mean, it's pretty robust. I mean, it's obviously ridiculous. How's he going to check up on things working from Finland?
Yeah, no, it's a good tale, put it that way. Alex, Jenny, thank you very much indeed. See you for more at 11. Let's take a look at the weather now. So it will feel chilly this week with limited sunshine again and a cold easterly wind. Most places will have a dry start tomorrow, but Western Ireland and central parts of the UK will see patchy rain and hill snow. Northwest Scotland, Wales and southwest England look most at risk of frosty conditions with some fog. There will be quite a lot of cloud around through the morning, but expect a better chance of bright spells developing than recently. Northwest Scotland will be the sunniest again. Patchy light rain will become increasingly confined to northern and central England and Western Ireland, with snow on some hills. Temperatures will be near average. There will be a chilly wind in the west. Afternoon similar, heavy rain may clip southwest Ireland during the evening. Well, our press preview continues in Sky News at 11. Israel's Prime Minister threatening to end the Gaza ceasefire if Hamas fails to release hostages. On Saturday, Donald Trump hosting the Jordanian king.